You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host, author, and occasional misanthrope, Juliette Miranda. Go to theunwritablerant.com and you can subscribe on iTunes or connect with the show on Facebook and Twitter.
Hey there, y'all. This is Juliette Miranda. Welcome to episode number 67 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. I am so excited about this episode, y'all. I've got two incredible interviews to share with you, so let's get this thing started. But you know the rules. Before we can do anything, we have to have a toast. I've got my glass ready. I hope you do too. Let's raise them up and let's say cheers. All right. Today, I am drinking Booker's bourbon. Yes, I know I've talked about them before, but there's a very good reason for it. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview here about why this is probably my favorite bourbon ever. Booker's bourbon is incredibly complex. Now, it has a very high proof, so I highly suggest that you mix it with a little bit of ice or some water. I think it's about, 121 proof, but I'll tell you, it is surprisingly smooth. But once you get past that, it's got this incredible buttery leather sort of taste. Very full-bodied, really rich, robust, complex sort of drink. And it is a perfect complement to this episode. Because I have two guests for you today. Starting off this episode, I'm going to be talking with Eric Roberts. Now, according to IMDb, Eric Roberts has been in 450 productions. He is incredibly prolific, and for 40 years, he has been in incredible movies. Movies where he plays these complex, intriguing, fascinating characters with so much enthusiasm and so much passion that you cannot help but be mesmerized by him. Now, Eric and I are going to be talking about some of the highlights of his career, some of my personal favorite movies, and some of his favorite roles. And in addition to that, we're going to be focusing on a new independent film that he's in called Eyes of the Roshi. He plays a character named Booker, which of course explains why I am drinking Booker's bourbon. And that brings me to my second guest, who is Ethan Marten. He's head of Late H Films, and he is also a star in the movie Eyes of the Roshi. Now, before I get things rolling, I do have to give out some very special thanks, and that would be to the folks over at Imperfect Podcast and Heckler Kane Creations. If it wasn't for these guys, we would never have heard of Eyes of the Roshi, and we would never have connected with Ethan Marten or Eric Roberts. So now, what do you say? Let's get comfortable, and let's have a chat with Eric Roberts. Hey, y'all, this is Juliette. Joining me on the show today is Eric Roberts, who is perhaps the most prolific actor in Hollywood. For more than 40 years, he has been in hundreds of productions, including some of my favorite movies like Star 80, Pope of Greenwich Village, The Dark Knight, and TV shows like Suits and The Young and the Restless. He's been nominated for an Academy Award and several Golden Globe Awards. Eric, I think it's fair to say that at this point, not even IMDb can keep up with you.
No, I think they're okay. They're okay. No, I have so much fun, and I've been allowed to do what I want to do almost every day of my adult life. I can't recommend what I do for a living more to anybody.
Now, I know Roger Ebert once described you as one of the most interesting actors he had ever seen. So what would you say makes a good actor?
Oh, that's such a huge question, but it's learning how to really listen and how to only respond when you've really heard. So what you're doing is you're really living, you're not pretending. If you have the ability to make the real human connection in life with other people, you have the ability to be an actor.
Well, and I think what makes you so special as an actor is the way that you're able to interpret a character.
Well, when I interpret characters, I look at it from their point of view, not my point of view for them. But like bad guys never feel they're bad guys. They always feel they're victims for the most part. So you have to approach playing those kinds of guys like that, which I do. Which is why I have so much fun playing them, because they're always innocent in my mind's eye as I play the character, even though they're big a-holes, most of them. But you must always remember that the worst people in the world are the last people to think they are the worst people in the world.
Well, looking at your character, Paulie, from Pope of Greenwich Village, now I know you've said in the past that that is probably the most fun you've had playing a character. So how did you determine what to make of him?
When I was offered that role, it was in January of that year. I was up in Connecticut doing a play in Hartford, the Glass Menagerie, and I was offered that play in January. They were going to go into production that September. So I had almost 9 months to prepare that, and I told them I would do it. And I said, but it's written one way. It's written like kind of a tough and street thug, but I would like to play him a little differently. And they asked me why. And I said, well, I got the idea from the book. And it was that these guys all look up to their mothers as if they're the ultimate women in the whole world, as if they're Madonna, as if they're the Mary. You know, each man's mother in these kinds of families is Mary, is Jesus' mother. That's the reverence they get. So I wanted to play this guy like a real mama's boy, but he wanted to be a tough guy, but he just wasn't. So I dropped the weight and I permed my hair, and I shut up a very skinny, harmless guy who wants to be big and tough. And that's what I played.
And you did all of this without changing any of his dialogue.
Not a bit of it. No, the dialogue was so brilliant and so wonderful. It could be played, it's all in how you project the voice and where you put the voice. Because had I played him a tough street thug, it'd have been this kind of an attitude, kind of a slice of loam kind of a thing, But I played him kind of sweet, kind of like, Charlie, what are we going to do about this, that, and the other thing? You know what I mean? So it's just all in the approach in him, like socially, how he talks, how he presents himself, that gives the audience what he is on the inside.
Is there any one particular character that you've played that really challenged you the most as an actor?
Yes, there was. The hardest character I've ever had to play was Paul Snider in a movie called Star 80. It was Bob Fosse's last film. And that was the hardest role I've ever taken on and the hardest character I've ever dissected. And the most disappointing it was to come out of playing that role because most people that you play in movies are usually very special. They're either bad or they're good, but they're very special. That's why there's a movie about them. But this guy, as I played him, I realized he was a dime a dozen. And I realized every other guy I was in an elevator with was just like this guy I was playing. And when I realized that, it was kind of frightening, and it made me sad. And it kind of launched me into a decade-long depression, actually. But because just my disappointment in the human frailty that was out there. Paul Snider was not unusual, and that's what broke my heart about him, because what he did was so profound, because it made so much noise in the press, because he killed the Playmate of the Year. He murdered her. So it became such huge news. And, it was unfortunate in every way you look at it.
What was it like working with Bob Fosse on that movie?
Bob Fosse was a dream come true. He was so prepared, he was so smart, and he was so literate about his own work that you could make up a question and he would have a real answer for you. He was just a dream come true. And he was also very, very, very devoted. Like when he wanted to make changes, he would show up at your front door in the middle of the night and said, "We have to make some changes." And he would come in with a little portable typewriter and he would sit down and he would ask you to improv while he typed stuff out. He was very, very dedicated. He was like a young student filmmaker on his first film all the time. But he had power and he had money and he had experience.
Well, you've worked with so many incredible people throughout your career. I was wondering, I heard, and I don't know if this is true, but did Sylvester Stallone actually write in a scene for you to do together in the movie The Specialist?
In The Specialist, we're about halfway through shooting the movie, and Sly one day comes to the set when I'm doing a scene with Susan. He comes to the set and he says, "I got to have lunch with you today." Okay, sure. I'm going to have lunch with you here on the set. Okay, sure. So he waits around, and it's lunchtime, and I go over and he goes, we don't have a scene together. And I said, yeah, right, I guess not. Well, we got to have a scene together, so we got to talk about it. And I got to go write a scene for us. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? You know, how do you want us to meet? And he said, I want to be the eye in the sky, and I want you in my eye. I said, I don't know what that means, but okay. Anyway, he wrote this scene where I like see him on the street, and I like basically put a knife in his eye, and I threaten him. It looks like I'm the toughest bad guy, but of course I lose because, you know, the bad guy has to lose in a Sylvester Stallone movie. That's just how that works.
That's only natural.
Yeah, right.
Now, tell me about the movie The Dark Knight. You were up against James Gandolfini for that role, weren't you?
I have no idea. All I know is that was one of the most fun movie experiences of my whole life, and because of one thing. We shot all the Chicago stuff in Chicago. Then I arrive in London. I go to bed. I get up. I go down. I get in my car. We drive 30 miles north of London to the old Zeppelin hangar, which was active from 1898 to 1905 or 6 or 7 in there somewhere. It was a Zeppelin hangar because, you know, the Zeppelin only lasted for about 10 years at the turn of the 20th century. Well, anyway, we drive to the Zeppelin hangar, which is really cool anyway, and it's about 3 football fields wide and about 3 stories tall. And we drive up to it, and I say, what's this? That's the old Zeppelin hangar, and they give me a little history on it. I walk into it, and it's all Gotham City. It is like magic. And if you're a movie geek, which of course I am, it takes your breath away. It's got street lights. It has upstairs apartments with lights on, and lights that flicker, and just it's an incredible illusion that it looks like a real city inside the Zeppelin hangar, but it's not. It's all a set. But it just takes your breath away. And if you are a movie geek, which I am, it's magic.
Absolutely. That sounds just heavenly. In addition to these big budget productions, you've also done a considerable amount of work with a lot of independent productions. And I wanted to talk about the movie Eyes of the Roshi. Could you tell me what attracted you to that movie when you first heard about it?
Well, it was not so much the movie as it was, you know, the movie makers, because the movie makers are a family who were kind of launched with their interest in the region by the father, who is here no longer. But the sons have carried on, and they're like me, they're these great movie geeks, and they're just very likable, smart, fun, interesting, talented, funny guys. That's what interested me, and it was a fun script to read. That's why I keep working. It's fun for me, and when I read something that is fun, I go, oh, well, let me do this one, you know. So that's how it all came about, really, was my interest in them. And it's also what I found most intriguing about the script is a real cinematic fun. You know, they could do all their camera tricks, and a lot of it was shot at night, so it was going to look great.
Well, and I think there was a little bit of dark humor running through it as well.
Of course there was, yeah.
Well, and you play the character Booker, who's something of an overconfident bounty hunter. What did you bring to that role? Well,
you know, those kinds of parts, you know, lean towards being cliche. And the first time I ever saw Dog the Bounty Hunter, I went, wow, what a caricature is that? But I couldn't stop watching him. He just held my attention. So when I read this, I thought, well, that's what I'll play. I will steal from a Dog the Bounty Hunter, and I will do my interpretation of that. So I stole my character from a guy who's a bounty hunter, but he's famous.
Do you find that when you're doing independent productions like this, you have a little bit more fun or freedom as an actor?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have like a total freedom. The last thing anybody has any time for on an independent movie is time for rehearsal, because the time is money. And when you're a name, you're not being paid, and everybody knows that you're there because of the project. That you like the quality of the project. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there because they aren't paying you well. So it's all because of the project.
It sounds like it's an incredibly liberating experience.
It is, and what's also great about when an indie film breaks through, it's a special satisfaction because it's a much bigger struggle because of the finance and what have you. And when you have people like me involved, you're not like paying me. You're just having me there because I like your script and or I like you. When it all works, it's such a victory, and it's such an artistic stamp for the writer director, the filmmaker,
Well, and I understand this film is starting to gain traction and interest for distribution. So what do you hope people will take away from seeing it once it's released?
Well, that's a question that has actually two answers, because there's an answer of, as entertainment, it's going to be fun to watch, and it's a story worth learning from. As an accomplishment being a movie, the fact that these guys got it done and they got it distributed is a minor miracle, because there is no movie industry anymore to lean on. It's all individuals out there working their asses off and making it happen. And these brothers, I fell in love with. They're just incredible guys. They have a reputation of being possessed by the Marx Brothers. But they're four of the most fun, dedicated filmmaking quartet I have ever worked for in my whole career. I wish them all good fortune. In fact, I had such a good time with them that I brought them a project that was developed for me that's called In the Gray, and we're discussing getting it off the ground together.
That's fantastic. Very cool.
Yeah, I hope so.
Oh, well, Eric, really, thank you so much for talking with me today. I appreciate your time, and just it's been a huge treat for me as just a movie geek and somebody who's loved your movies.
Oh, thank you, darling. Thanks for making it so pleasant.
Oh, well, thank you. I will tell you that when I was talking to him and I heard him do his character Charlie from Pope of Greenwich Village, I had one of those incredibly surreal, can't believe this is happening moments. And now we're going to be turning things over to Ethan Marten. Not only is he the producer of Eyes of the Roshi, but he is also an actor in it. And wait until you hear about the character he plays. And make sure you listen at the end, because he's going to go into some points about how you can support Eyes of the Roshi, which is such a well-done, cool movie. But I'll leave that up to him, y'all. Let's kick back and let's hear from Ethan. Hey, y'all. Juliette here. Today, I am joined by Ethan Marten. He is an actor, producer, and the head of Light Age Films. And his recent production, Eyes of the Roshi, is gaining serious traction. We cannot wait to talk about it more with you. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Juliette. Pleasure to be here.
Now, I know Eyes of the Roshi is certainly not your first journey into filmmaking. You've actually worked in film, both in front of and behind the camera, for many years.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, it's kind of a family business for you, isn't it?
It started at the dinner table when I was a kid, 5 years old. Everybody would laugh and make jokes. It was like being at the dinner table with the Marx Brothers. Mom would play the role of Margaret Dumont, and we would torture her. And it was always just great fun, lots of laughter. And I remember turning to my older brother, Seth, and asking him, when would I be funny too? Because I wanted to get in on the act. And that was the beginning of my career.
Well, and your father was especially influential in the motion picture industry, wasn't he?
Oh, Dad was a legend. He helped produce and finance 150 motion pictures and Broadway shows. He dealt with Marlene Dietrich, John Wayne, Errol Flynn, and of course, what was most meaningful to us as kids is when Moe Howard of the Three Stooges called the house, and the kids flipped out because that was serious motion picture business. Then we knew pop was important.
Having the Three Stooges call your house, I love it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and he invited Pop out to the studio, and he suggested that he bring all the kids. And so that was it. We were going to go meet Moe Howard, and we were all aflutter.
So tell me, what is it about making movies that appeals to you?
Oh, so many different things and on so many different levels. I think the ability to affect change, the ability to move people. I think when I first knew that I wanted to act, I was probably around 8 years old. And I was just alone in the living room, and the movies were just playing, and it was a John Steinbeck novel being produced with Henry Fonda. It was Grapes of Wrath. I was transfixed by this story and the cruelty toward these, American farmers during the Dust Bowl and how they were treated. I just remember being moved to tears watching this story. I was so engrossed. And at the end, when Henry Fonda gave that speech to his mother because he's forced to leave, because she says, "I'll never see you again. Tom, where will I be?" And he says, "I'll be in the laughter of children when they're hungry, but they know supper's about to be fed." And I mean, at 8 years old, this so moved me. I didn't know what this really was, but I wanted to do it. And I think that was a seed that was planted in my brain way back when.
So then from there, you went to acting, and you've done work behind the camera as well. So you know every aspect to filmmaking there is.
It's funny. I really didn't start acting professionally until after college, but I was in and around it for the longest time. My brother John came out of the womb knowing he wanted to be an actor and a performer. When he was delivered, I think the doctor put him in my mom's arms, and the first thing he said was, "Meme." And I think we all were kind of assigned or knew we had certain roles to fill. Rick was going to be a lawyer, and Seth was going to be a baseball player, and John wanted to be an actor. So I was trying to find myself, but inadvertently I kept getting thrown into things despite my dad's wishes because he wanted to save us from the industry. I kept getting involved in film. And at one point in the mid-'80s, I was given the opportunity to work behind the camera with Buzz Kulik in Too Young to Hero. And it was such a great experience, coupled with stage experiences that I'd had up until then. And I knew I was ruined. Once it's in the blood, you're really not good for anything else. So you have to figure out how you're going to make your career on stage or screen or both, because once you decide you're going to be an actor, it's because you really are no good for anything else. Once it's in the blood, you're done.
Tell me a little bit about Light Age Films, because I've heard you say in the past that your goal with the company is sort of to broaden social and spiritual awareness through films and through storytelling. So how are you achieving that?
One of the projects that I'm very proud of, I'm working on with my three older brothers, Richard, Jonathan, and Seth. And it's called White Buffalo, an American Prophecy. And this is our foray into the First Nations of America, the indigenous people. We're giving them the ability to tell their unfiltered stories straight to the public. So it's been an amazing journey and an adventure into the Americas with the first Americans. And White Buffalo is a prophecy that is very near and dear to the Plains Indians, especially the Lakota. It tells about a spirit that came to the Lakota many, many centuries ago. And she foretold of a coming age of peace where we would see the mending of the sacred hoop and there would be a great time of peace. So when a white buffalo was born in 1994, that was basically part of the fulfillment of their prophecy, because there's a 1 in 250 billion chance of a pure white buffalo being born. Not an albino, but an actual white buffalo. So that is one of the ways we hope to bring a higher consciousness to the continent.
Well, and I think that's sort of the same thing that I enjoyed about Eyes of the Roshi, was that it had more of a depth to the story. I mean, it was really a multi-layered story. There was a lot going on in that you don't see in a lot of films.
I love that you got that. How did it come through for you? I'm curious.
Funny thing, it actually reminded me a little bit of movies that I've seen by people like Takashi Miike, where you have sort of this baseline of a person who's either been wronged and wants to move on but can't. There's something that's holding them back. So I think that's kind of what I took away from Roshi.
I'm so glad that you saw that. We tried to put it between the lines. It was very important to Grandmaster Adam Yin, the executive producer and the star of the film, that come through. His personal philosophy, though he wanted to be an entertaining film and a film that people would see and gravitate toward, he wanted to at least layer his philosophy in there so people would understand there's a different way to do things.
Now, going off of that, how would you describe just the general premise of Eyes of the Roshi?
It's like an orgy. It's an orgy. Sergio Leone, young Tarantino, and the Coen brothers. If they had a cinematic orgy, the theatrical love child would be Eyes of the Roshi. You could describe it as a drama with dark comedy and suspense. There are things that are, almost partly horrific about it. It's not a simple description. It doesn't fit neatly into any one genre, which is why I'm so happy that we're developing this wonderful cult following. People are finding it and loving it because they don't necessarily want just, okay, here's how it starts. It's simple. We'll find it in the drama section. Okay, it's like going to the old Blockbuster. Okay, I know what section is it. It's over there. How'd I do?
Well, you nailed it, though, because it has elements of everything in it. It's got those, kind of like fast-paced action segments, but it's got the drama as well. And it has that spiritual undercurrent sort of woven through it, which, by the way, was beautiful. Just your shots, where he's practicing in the fields and everything. It was really well done.
Our director and screenwriter, John Martnell, Rusty, and Joe Baum, I took the lead on writing this. And I think they did a beautiful job. And I'm really proud of the cinematography. It really does shine through. I'm also really excited about the music. Bill Gauntz, Wade Mosier out of Canada, they've been working together for 10 years. They've never met. And they've done music scoring for a lot of the network television shows for well over a decade now. They met at the sneak screening of Roshi. So that was the first time they'd ever gotten together. And that was fantastic.
Interesting. Well, you have some heavy hitters in this movie. I mean, we have to say Eric Roberts is in it, of course.
We have one heavy hitter. That's Eric Roberts. This guy, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of major names over the years. It's not I'm name dropping. It's when you're about to meet somebody who's on your bucket list of people to work with. It's very exciting. And there's a pro and a con. The pro is, oh my God, I'm going to meet Eric Roberts and I'm going to work nose to nose with Eric Roberts. This is going to be great. And the drawback is also you're going to meet one of the people who you've been dying to work with. And sometimes it's like the Super Bowl. Sometimes the expectation is, greater than the actuality. And I'm so happy to say he exceeded my expectations. Working with Eric Roberts is not only like taking a master's class in acting, but he was such an incredibly gracious person while acting the scene with him. A very giving actor.
It needs to be said also that you are acting in the movie as well, and you play a hitman, and you have scenes with Eric. So it's just got to be this intensity, just being on set with him and, watching him work with you.
Oh, the funny thing is, before you start, it's, oh my God, I'm going to do a scene with Eric Roberts, and this is great, and I'm going to be nose to nose. Let's make some theatrical noise here. The moment you're in the scene with Eric Roberts, you're not in the scene with Eric Roberts. You're in the scene with whatever character is in front of you. He's gone. It's his character. I guess it's the one piece of theatrical training that I really take with me everywhere I go, and that's focus on your partner. I mean, you don't have to worry about what you're doing. And then it's, Ethan goes bye-bye, and it's character to character, and it's real. That's what's really amazing. When you're working with a real actor, the focus is astounding, and what you're fed is great, and it only makes you better.
Well, and your character itself, I mean, was incredibly intense, and really, you went all out in that role.
It was easy. I had great people to work with, and it was... I once had a casting director tell me, Ethan, you're the most intense, relaxed person I've ever met. Carrie the Hitman is an interesting person to live with for a while.
Well, how did you bring that character to life?
For me, it's a matter of getting out of the way. The character dictates, and I just try and melt away. So my mission is just get out of the way, and whatever's left is an honest human being with wants and needs. Other research and background, it was observations. Stacey Whittle, who plays Sandy Kane, the stripper girlfriend of Eric, actually, she's a floss addict. So everywhere you went on set, she always had things of floss. And I was fascinated by that. I adopted that as his tick. He might have been a psychopath, but
but he had clean teeth.
He'd been in prison for 15. Yeah, that's right. I pictured he had a kernel of corn in his teeth for 15 years, and he couldn't get it out. So he asks for two things. He wants floss and a gun.
Man knows his mind. Yeah.
Yes. When you're surrounded by so many talented people, I mean, first of all, I have to talk about my brothers for a second, so forgive me for the nepotism, but these guys were my heroes. Mom and Dad were all of our heroes, but when I was growing up, I just so idolized my brothers. So to have Rick, the oldest, who never was an actor, but then ended up being the biggest ham of all of us, John, who came out of the womb knowing he was going to be an actor, and Seth, who to me is an astounding actor. To be able to have Jonathan as Marty and Seth as Itchy, and even Rick in a scene as a shadow, so we could have all four brothers on set. That, for me, was a dream come true. God, we had so many great performances in this film, so I was just very happy.
Is there any particular moment from shooting that really stands out to you?
Watching Amanda Dunn and Stacey Whittle do their performances were great. Amanda plays Blanche. She could go from great pathos 1 second to comedy the next. I actually love the scene where she meets the Roshi. She meets Adam for the first time, and he's doing some weird yoga move. He's contorted in some weird position, and she's surprised to see him. She doesn't overplay it, but she's just really worried about finding this stranger in the barn, and he's doing some weird things she's never seen before. And it gets a really nice laugh. But when she's got the dramatic scenes, she's got great dramatic chops. And Stacey Whittle, who, has to play great terror, can also evoke great sympathy from the audience as well. There were a lot of real performances. Mark Zilgis as Bonnie Bright, and Chris Van Cleve as Hogan Dodd, who, frankly, gives a singing performance, which, for my money, seals the deal for us being a great cult film. I love that moment in the film. Itchy in the bathtub when we first meet him breaks my heart. Yeah, I don't want to give away what happens in the movie, but I'm just so happy with so many of the performances here. And of course, Grandmaster, who I just think comes off as such a wonderfully likable human being in this film.
So I asked Eric this question, and I'd like your opinion as well. What do you hope people will take away from this movie when they see it?
I hope that first and foremost, people really enjoy it. I hope that they're pleasantly surprised with how much they enjoy it, and that they feel like they got their money's worth because it was well written and well executed and a well above average indie film. I hope that knowingly or unknowingly, even though it's a bit of a splatter film by the end, thanks to, in part to somebody's character. I'm hoping that they understand that karmically, the people who led peaceful lives in this film, they survive and they live peacefully. And those that made a choice toward the darker side, if you will, end up reaping the rewards of their karma. That's why we open with Adam's Buddhist meditation and we close with it as well. So hopefully it wasn't a hammer over the head, that some of these things were subtle and still get delivered. Meanwhile, I think it's a great movie for millennials. I think this is just a really good film, and I hope it speaks to them.
Now that the movie is complete, what are your next steps to bring it to an audience?
Well, we are exploiting it to its fullest. We're doing the old trunk show, so we're going from independent theater to independent theater. We have reconnected with one of my dad's old clients from the 50s and 60s, Sam Sherman, the president of Independent International Pictures, who, by the way, had done more motion pictures with Lon Chaney Jr. and John Carradine than any other producer in Hollywood. He screened the film, called me back immediately, said, "You've got..." He was surprised because he's known me since I was a little pisher. And he didn't actually recognize me in the role, which I actually appreciate.
You look a little crazy in that role.
Exactly. So I'm glad I wasn't recognizable. He said, "You got a saleable movie." Now, Sam speaks in very sober terms, especially for a producer. He said, "This is very saleable. I'm going to take it on, and we're going to get you a real distributor." I feel I'm in some of the most capable hands going, and to have a living legend like Sam Sherman take us on, that takes a lot of the pressure off. Meanwhile, I continue to do the marketing, reach the audience directly, and they'll make the demand for how the film gets seen and where it gets seen. So we'll do limited theatrical, we'll get our cable, we'll get our video on demand, and eventually someday online, but I'd like to do it by the numbers and reach as wide an audience as possible. And I thank you guys, because it's, podcasts like yours that really are delivering us to our audience. So thank you.
So right now, what can someone do to support Eyes of the Roshi?
What a glorious question. Go to Twitter and look for Eyes of the Roshi. Go to eyesoftheroshi.com and just talk to us. Write back, drop comments. We have a new hashtag. We want Roshi Film. R-O-S-H-I. We want Roshi Film. And basically talk to us, because we're really nice people and we're real, and we'll talk right back to you. And we love talking to people who've enjoyed the film or had a good experience or want to see it. And this will help us when we talk to distributors and we show them that we're already bringing an audience with us.
Well, excellent. Ethan, thank you so much for talking with me today.
It was an incredible pleasure, and I thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been fantastic.
Happy to.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
He was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away, let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton relay. Hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo, sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this.